Today we're talking about mixing. Maybe you've been surfing the internet and you've seen videos from people going really in depth, getting really technical, or it's an hour-long breakdown of how to mix. All these are helpful, these are all good. This video is going to be a little bit different than those. It's going to be somewhere in between. So if you're an artist today, looking into mixing a track, or you're doing some other kind of creative role, and your main objective is just getting music made and into a finished state as it should be, this is the perfect video for you. Currently I'm in the middle of this series taking you from beginner to professional in music production in a much more laid back style than other videos that you can find on my channel. The goal is to be conversational and really take you into my mental process behind these different aspects in making music. I'm on my drive to the gym right now, so first we gotta hit leg day, baby. Let's get into it. And then we'll be back sitting in the chair with a sore butt, making music together. Before we get into the technical side, I like to use these car talks to explain the mentality and thought process that I have behind mixing a track, because so often this is actually more important than actually the technical tools and things that we do to mix a song. For me, one of the struggles that I faced early in my music production journey was learning the difference between producing a track and mixing a track. Because when you're an independent artist, when you're just growing up and making everything yourself, the lines get really blurry, and the line between mixing engineer and producer is completely gone since you're doing both of those roles yourself. What's helped me is learning that putting clear boundaries in place for yourself as you're working on a track, taking it from start to finish, is super vital to you making progress and actually releasing music, which is the goal, right? I find myself time and time again playing with different effects, dialing things in, really adjusting the tone of different instruments. And I thought that I was mixing because I'm using effects. But really what I was doing was I was producing, and I was actually changing the tone of the track. So what is the difference between a producer and a mixing engineer? From my perspective, a producer is forming the DNA of the track with a lot of creative choices. And the mixing engineer is going to be making choices that help facilitate the original vision that the producer had making the song. So this means practically the producer is going to be throwing on whatever. They're not going to be worried about the levels of the tracks. They're not going to be worried about if something is too wide or too narrow or whatever. They're going to capture the essential ingredients of the track. And then what the mixing engineer is going to do is he's going to rein things in. He's going to dial in the levels, the EQ, and the dynamic range, so that everything can work together and the original vision can be properly facilitated, so that the most people possible can enjoy the track. Like I said earlier, I'm a huge advocate for having boundaries in your process. And so I do recommend, like, if you're an independent artist, if you're doing everything from scratch, if this is you working on your own music from scratch, as I assume it is, I do recommend you'll have separate times for producing and mixing. Put those in separate categories. Don't try to do them at the same time. You're gonna want to have one time where you're in your producer mode, coming up with the essential track components, and then you're gonna want to have a separate time where you're analytically thinking through the makeup of each track, seeing how it all works together, and surgically cutting, removing, boosting things to enhance and facilitate the original idea the best that you possibly can, so that you have a great final product. Again, it can be tough to have these different boundaries in place because you're in the software, you're the one that's taking this song from beginning to end. But by having those roadblocks of, okay, I'm done producing, now I'm mixing, all right, I'm done mixing, now I'm mastering, that's going to actually help your mental process so much more than if you just say, I have to finish this entire song. Like, what does that actually mean? You have to divide it into steps for yourself. And by dividing this into steps, that's actually going to help your own mental space, so that you know what you're doing and you finish tasks on time. All right, we're just pulling into the gym now. Gonna hit these legs, then drive back, talk a little bit more about this. This car got Wi-Fi on it. It's crazy. Absolutely sucked. Probably the worst day at the gym in a minute. I feel lightheaded, like I'm gonna pass out, but could do some stretches, drive back. All right, guys, we're back in the studio, showered up, feeling fresh. One note that I wanted to make before we do get into mixing is, you might know this already, I hope you do, but it's really important to have accurate referencing monitors to mix on. So for example, got these Yamaha studio monitors, and they do the job. Honestly, any studio monitor is gonna work and be much better for you than just like headphones or something. So I do recommend, if you're into mixing, studio monitors are the most ideal. Here we go. Yeah. Alrighty. Project that I'm gonna be using to teach mixing today is actually gonna be from an earlier video in the series where I taught you how to make music using loops and samples. So if you haven't seen that video and you're interested in learning how to make music using stock loops and Logic, I recommend you checking that out first. But if not, that's okay. We'll still learn what we need to know in this. This is not a very big track. As you can see, we're sitting at 9 tracks. Very small project for me. I'm usually mixing somewhere north of 100 tracks, at least, which I'm trying to change. I want to be more of a minimalist. But for now, we'll start in this project. We'll keep it really simple. Hitting X opens up our mixing view, which is what we'll use to get into mixing this track. As you can see, there's no effects on any of these channels. Your effects you input right in these channel slots. You can see right here. And no channel has any effects except for my vocal right here. And this goes back to what we were talking about in the car, the line between production and mixing. I threw on these effects as a production choice, not necessarily as a mixing choice. The nice thing is, since I'm the producer and mixer, I could change this right now if I wanted to. If I was just mixing this track and getting it from like a client or somebody different, all the tracks would be audio. I wouldn't have access to the actual plugin information in most cases, but I do right now, so that's kind of nice. We're not going to change any of those settings though. We're going to pretend it's just part of the track. Let's listen to this. So I was going through that. It's really just making mental notes on where things are sitting in the track, the vibe that I'm getting, and want to continue on. Again, since I produced this track and made this, it's kind of easy for me to already know what the vision is supposed to be and just jump straight into mixing from there. I'm sure it's going to be a similar case for you. If you're making your own music and mixing it, you'll be in the same boat, which is super convenient. I can start a lot of different ways. You could really jump into any one of these tracks, start throwing on effects, doing different things. This is a method that's worked for me time and time again, and that's just setting the levels first, starting with the kick, then the bass, and then just working our way up through the sonic range here. So we'll just solo this kick. Solo the bass with it. Maybe turn it down a little bit. Do electric pianos next. That's pretty loud too. Turn it down. Just setting levels, right? Still, it gets a little loud right there, so I'll just turn down a touch more. It'll be brought up later with compression. Let's bring in some more drums before we get into the other instruments. Really, I do want my kick and snare stay on top of everything else, so turn this down. See, I'm just pulling stuff down. Really, I just want to make sure that the kick is punching through, because that's our foundation. If we lose that, we're losing our foundation there. And the strings. We'll pull these way back. Finally, the vocal. This is the next most important part to the track. Kick, snare, vocal. I pull back just a touch. That sounds pretty good to me. Alright, we have our tracks leveled. And that's pretty easy to do, right? We're just pulling on faders, taking our time with each. No need to rush this process, because I find with mixing, if I can do my best to make good decisions up front and not just slap on a bunch of effects and plugins to try to make it sound better, it saves me a lot of time down the road. The next up, we're going to use EQ to carve out some frequencies and space in the mix. Sorry guys, I'm editing this video right now and realizing I didn't really explain EQ. One way sound is measured is on a frequency spectrum. So there's low frequencies, mid-range frequencies, and then high frequencies. You're gonna kind of see me playing with the EQ and seeing like each of those frequencies, but really what we're doing is we're mostly cutting but also doing some boosting on each of these frequencies to kind of shape the frequency of the overall track, to bring out certain things, tame it down. You'll see it. Let's repeat that process again. We're gonna start with the kick. We're gonna solo the bass with the kick. I'm gonna leave the kick as is. We're kind of gonna build the mix around the kick in this. Click up here to add EQ in. I'm gonna click and check out my EQ on this kick as well, and we can see where it's hitting. It's hitting around 60, and so I want to make some space for that in the bass. If I boost that, you can hear it gets muddier. If I just pull this back just a touch, maybe just -3 dB, you can hear that it just subtly, really subtly cuts away some space in the mix for the kick to breathe a little bit more. Alright, up next, let's go to our electric piano here. Throw EQ in. Just want to make sure that the bass has enough space, so I'm just gonna cut away some of these lower frequencies. honestly, since these are stock loops, they already sound pretty good, so there's not much that I need to do. Less is more. Let me bring in some more drums. That clap sounds a little bit bright to me. You can hear that. Just make it a little bit darker, take out some of the high frequency in here. Here it gives some more clarity. Let's bring in this drum loop. As I was listening, I knew for sure I wanted to cut out some stuff in this one, so we're gonna start by low passing here. And then we're gonna just take away any, it sounds a little muddy, so I'm gonna find where the mud's coming from. Really, I'm trying to isolate that hi-hat a little bit more. Hi-hat's coming through like right up here, so just give that a touch, a little boost. Might pull back the volume just a little bit too. I always put a high pass on the vocal. That sounded pretty good. Put the strings in. Again, just clean up some of the low end. And I kind of want these to punch through mid-range and certain mid-range frequency. So I'm going to boost that a little bit. I'll cut out some of the bottom. You can already hear this is sounding way better than what we started with. Up next, we're going to control the dynamic range of tracks using compression. Alright, once again, totally forgot to explain compression. My bad. Here to do that right now. Essentially, compression compresses the dynamics of your song. If you just want to picture it, it's like if I have a sandwich and the sandwich is pretty full, and you want to be able to fit the whole thing in your mouth, you squash it down a little bit so you can eat it. That's what compression does to your audio tracks. Alright, back to the video. So one thing I noticed for sure was I want to compress. If you notice here, specifically this part of the track is pretty loud. Right? We kind of want to tame that in using compression, so we'll pull up a compressor here. Now if you look at that, right, lots of knobs and things going on. Your process, as you're just getting started out, should really be focused on the threshold and ratio. These two knobs, I recommend setting your ratio first. Higher is going to be more compression, lower is going to be less compression, and the threshold is basically controlling when the compressor kicks in. Okay, also, that was not quite true. I just looked up exactly what it does. It says threshold is the level at which the compressor begins to reduce the volume of an input signal. That is louder than the threshold. Ratio determines how much of the amplitude of the sound is compressed. So, still confusing. Probably just mess with the knobs and that'll teach you better, but sorry about that. So I'm going to set my ratio a little bit low to start. You can see it's already kicking in. I'm going to set this to 0 actually. Change the type of compression too. I'm gonna change the distortion so it's just adding some coloration to the signal. It's here before. And then after. Didn't work. No, I'm just kidding. Let's just turn it down a little bit. Keep messing with it. It's not an extreme difference by any means, but even little subtle wins, I'll totally take that. The other instrument that I want to compress is actually all of our drums together. The way that I do that is by sending them to a bus. So we'll just put them in bus 1 here, called drums. And we'll just toss on a compressor here. Nice thing too is we can come up here and you could even find a little drum preset. In this case, we're kind of using compression as glue to make all the drums sound like it's a unified instrument, if that makes sense. So it's these really subtle changes that can help bring a track together. Let's listen to everything all at once. This is sounding good. We kind of want to have an interesting stereo image, so I'm going to pan some of these sounds different ways. So these strings I'm going to pan to the left. That vocal I'm going to pan to the right. Turn down this electric piano a little bit, it's still pretty loud. And for this electric piano, that compression helped us a little bit, but didn't quite get us to where I was hoping. So I'm going to actually come and add some clip distortion to this, just a tiny amount, but hopefully it can rein it in a little bit more. Else we can do to cut out those high frequencies is literally just turn down the frequency that we see it playing up there. So that's what I'm doing with the EQ right now, just because those high notes are still bothering me a little bit. As you can hear, that definitely helped a little bit. sound good. Really, EQ and compression are two of the main tools that you're going to use to mix your songs. That's where a lot of the surgical editing and dynamic editing of your track comes from. And if you get too crazy with it, then you can get lost in the weeds pretty easy. So if you're just getting started with mixing, definitely the two tools I recommend using: just EQ, just compression. Just mess with those, mess with the settings, start to figure out how to dial things in. It'll help you out a ton. Of course, there's so many more effects in here that we can play with. Distortion, modulation. But really, I don't use those to mix very often. Those tools are usually more of production tools for me to shape the sound how I like it. The final tool that I do like to use when I'm polishing a mix is reverb and delay. I will typically send all instruments to a reverb, maybe 2 reverbs, and maybe 2 delays. For the sake of this track, we're just going to send to 1 reverb and to 1 delay. So what I'm going to do, just make it really easy on myself, highlight all these tracks, and I'm going to click down here where it says bus again. We're going to send them all to 2 different buses. In one bus, we're going to name reverb. It's bus 2. And the other we will call delay. And the reverb bus can come down here to our reverb tools. And there's a couple different options you got. I like the Space Designer, typically. We'll just leave it as is, make sure the dry is at 0. And then for our delay, we're going to come down. We're going to add in a stereo delay here. I'm just going to change a little bit of the settings. We're going to adjust the low cut and the high cut. This is just kind of controlling the tone of the delay, and will give us a cleaner sound. But yeah, we can leave everything else as is for now. And now, working with these knobs, I'm going to slowly start bringing in some reverb and delay to a few different tracks in here. As you can hear, that really is just polishing the mix. It's giving some elements more space to sit back and really adding a sense of depth to the mix, so it doesn't sound like it's just coming straight out of my computer and hitting you in the face. And this is really mixing. Again, guys, a lot of these changes are going to be more subtle, and that's actually a good thing because it means that we're not making production choices specifically, we're making mix choices. Briefly, before we wrap up this video, let's dive into how I master things. I used to have kind of more of a process with mastering, but Logic just came out with a tool where I'm now able to just click on this mastering button here. It's going to analyze the track and then come out with a mastering preset that I can use and adjust as I need. Super helpful, and this has honestly saved me a bunch of time. And I recommend, if you don't know how to master a track, just go through this. As you guys can hear, it's going to add some loudness to the track. It's going to, we'll turn on this exciter. It's basically going to make it sound better, which is nice. Sounds great. Like, it Can't go wrong with that at all. Alright, thanks for watching again. Hope you learned something from this and it was useful to you. And we're going to be back next week with another tutorial throughout this series. Hope that you're enjoying it. Maybe you can tell, but I've pre-recorded a bunch of these videos to release during the summer. And I do hope that they're useful, that people are watching them. If not, it's okay. I'm going to learn something. But if you are, it just bless me. Have a great week. Peace.